The UK courts are at the center of a wave of litigation stemming from the Mozambique Tuna bond or hidden debt scandal. The scandal involved $2 billion in bank loans and bond issues from Swiss bank Credit Suisse and Russian bank VTB. The bank loans were obtained in secret by Mozambican state-owned companies without the legally required approval of the Mozambique parliament and were backed by hidden government guarantees. The loans were intended to finance contracts for 3 maritime projects between the state companies and Privinvest, a Lebanese UAE shipbuilder. These projects aimed to improve maritime security and develop the country's fishing industry. However, a 2017 audit by Kroll discovered that $500 million in loans could not be accounted for and that Privinvest may have overinflated prices by $713 million. The audit also found that $200 million of the loans were spent on bank fees and commissions. The U.S. Department of Justice subsequently charged former Credit Suisse bankers, Privinvest employees and Mozambican government officials including the country's former finance minister with money laundering and corruption in relation to the loans. In early 2019, DOJ prosecutors alleged that those charged had created maritime projects that conducted little to no legitimate business activity to funnel at least $200 million in bribes and kickbacks to themselves. Following the discovery of over £1 billion in undisclosed loans by the IMF in April 2016, 14 partner countries and the World Bank suspended financial aid totaling $265 million per year. The IMF has also suspended $165 million of a separate $286 million emergency loan to the country. The credit rating agency Moody's predicted that the government would default on its loans and downgraded its sovereign rating as a result. This plunged one of Africa's poorest countries into debt default and economic crisis, with total debt equaling 85% of Mozambique's GDP. Arbitration documents reveal that Mozambique has accused its former finance minister, Manuel Chang, of accepting at least $5 million in bribes following a meeting with the CEO of Privinvest, Iskander Safa, at his house in southern France in September 2013. In the documents, Privinvest does not deny making these payments and claims the total amount transferred was actually $7 million, but says these were legitimate payments used for electoral campaigns and commercial projects. Mozambique has also alleged in the arbitration documents that Safa arranged payments to several people close to former President Guebuza, including his personal assistant and eldest son, Ndambi Guebuza. Others accused of accepting bribes include the 3 former Credit Suisse bankers Andrew Pierce, Surjan Singh and Dedalina Subiva. The bankers are alleged to have accepted bribes to ensure Credit Suisse participated in the project. For their part, the Switzerland-based bank has accepted the payments were bribes, but claims they were not aware of what the bankers were doing and cannot be held responsible for their rogue actions. These are high-stakes cases for both Mozambique and the banks involved. At the heart of the matter is the question of who is to blame and who will foot the bill for what former World Bank anti-corruption expert Richard Messick has described as the most egregious corruption offense of the past decade. The use of UK courts in this case is ironic, given that UK regulators and prosecutors appear to have taken little action in relation to the corruption allegations, despite the fact that the alleged bribery schemes were devised by London-based employees. This raises legitimate concerns about the UK's lax enforcement and regulatory regime, as well as whether it effectively outsources enforcement in these cases to the United States. So far, the U.S. Justice Department has charged 3 former Credit Suisse bankers, 3 former Mozambican government officials, including the country's former finance minister, and 2 Privinvest executives, with money laundering and violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Following that, the 3 investment bankers pleaded guilty and admitted laundering bribes paid by Privinvest and taking a cut. Jean Bastani, a former Privinvest executive, was acquitted in December 2019 after the DOJ prosecuted him for defrauding U.S. investors. The Department of Justice's criminal investigation into Credit Suisse resulted in a financial settlement on October 19, 2021, in which the bank pleaded guilty to fraud and agreed to pay fines totaling approximately $475 million to US, UK, and Swiss regulators. Credit Suisse has also agreed to forgive $200 million worth of debt owed by Mozambique to the bank. Mozambique charged 20 people in connection with the case in August 2019, including Ndambi Guebuza, the son of former President Armando Guebuza, former Finance Minister Manuel Chang, state security and intelligence service officials, and various other government officials and bankers. The trial began on August 23, 2021, with 19 people accused of blackmail, forgery, embezzlement, and money laundering. The hearings in Maputo are still ongoing. Manuel Chang is not included in these proceedings, and the Mozambican government claims that he is facing separate charges. Ndambi Gabuza is accused of accepting $33 million in bribes from Privinvest in order to persuade his father, who was president at the time, to approve the maritime projects. Cipriano Mutoda, one of the defendants and a former intelligence official, testified on the second day of the trial that Mozambique's current president and his predecessor, Armando Guebuza, were deeply involved in the corrupt scheme. Manuel Chang, the former finance minister accused of signing off on the corrupt loans, is currently in South Africa, where he was arrested in 2018 at the request of US authorities. Both Mozambican and US authorities have requested Chang's extradition, leading to a South African court battle that ultimately left the decision of where to extradite Chang in the hands of Justice Minister Ronald Lamola. On 23 August 2021, it was announced that Chang would be extradited to Mozambique. The next day, however, a coalition of 22 Mozambican civil society organizations operating under the umbrella organization, Forum de Monitoria do Orçamento, FMO, filed an emergency motion in South Africa to prevent Chang from being extradited. The FMO argued that Chang would not face justice in Mozambique and that the attempts to extradite him to Mozambique are motivated more by the desire to keep him out of the hands of US authorities. But they fear would offer Chang sentencing leniency in exchange for testifying against his alleged co-conspirators, rather than bringing the former finance minister to justice. The South African High Court blocked the extradition on August 27, 2021, and ordered Ronald Lamola, the justice minister, to produce the documents that justified his decision to extradite to Mozambique. Following a full hearing, the High Court ruled on November 10, 2021, that the Justice Minister's decision was irrational and instead directed that Chang be extradited to the United States. The Mozambique's government is suing Credit Suisse, a Swiss investment bank, as well as 3 of its former London-based employees and Privinvest. It is asking the courts to invalidate a $622 million loan made by Credit Suisse for a maritime project involving Privinvest, as well as to order repayment of a separate $535 million contract between state-owned Mozambique Asset Management and Privinvest, and to order additional compensation for government-issued Eurobonds used to refinance the deals. In a separate case, the Mozambican government is suing Iskander Safa, the owner of the Lebanese shipbuilder Privinvest, for allegedly conspiring with Credit Suisse and high-ranking bankers to bribe Mozambican officials. The cases have been conjoined because of duplication in the subject matter. BIM, a Mozambican investment bank, is also bringing a case against Credit Suisse, seeking repayment of $58.7 million, which formed part of one of the loans to the state-owned companies. The state-owned company had repaid $2.5 million to BIM, but it defaulted thereafter. As of April 2020, the total sum owed to BIM, including interest, was nearly $80 million. In court filings, BIM said it adopts a neutral position in Mozambique's case against Credit Suisse, but if Mozambique loses, BIM will seek repayment from the Republic. If it wins, it will seek repayment from Credit Suisse. VTB Capital, the British subsidiary of Russian bank VTB, one of the lending banks in the loan scandal, is suing the Mozambican government for loans of $670 million to be repaid through enforcing the guarantees against the Republic. According to court filings, Mozambique repaid a first installment of $40.7 million of the loan, but defaulted thereafter. By 26 November 2019, the outstanding sum stood at $817.5 million. VTB described talks to restructure the loan as having broken down. The Mozambique Republic's lawyers, in exchanges with VTB, argued that the guarantees were not valid, binding and enforceable.